I think we're going to try to get started. Is that awfully loud? Too loud? Okay. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. Obviously, it's a very beautiful, sunny, hot, lovely Saturday, so I'm sure there are other things that you might have been doing, but I really appreciate you all coming here today. And I want to say a special thanks to Congressman Jim McGovern for squeezing it in to his day. He is a leader on just about every important issue, in my opinion: gun violence, health, education, democracy, human rights, and we are incredibly lucky to have him represent us in this part of Massachusetts. So thank you for your work and for being here. Our state Senator Jo Comerford was planning to come. She still might, but she had a lot of conflicting things. But she has all. I want a big shout out for her. She's been a huge supporter to us, has been on an advisory panel, and been a huge help. So we just totally appreciate her support. So even though she's not here. Next, I want to quickly recognize all of our board members, some who come from quite a far. So if everybody, board members, if you could stand up just so people could see you. We have people from the West Coast, Atlanta, Washington, and Geneva, Switzerland. Why not? So thank you all for coming, and a special thank you to the very hard-working board committee who put this event together. And I'm talking about Debbie Shriver, Debbie Roth-Howe, and a special huge thanks to Jenny McKenna, who is sitting at the door and has been the board chair and board member for countless years. And I can't thank her enough for all of her support in so many ways. So big thanks to her. I also do want to recognize Olivia Dreier, who you're going to hear from in a little bit, the past executive director who continues to be very involved in Karuna. So thank you. And then I do not want to forget, last but not least, the staff that do the work. So maybe if you could all stand up. We have Jennifer Hall-Witt, two of them standing there, Troy Caruana, Laura Anderson, and Tom Meehan, and we have a new wonderful intern, Noah Costume, from Amherst. So there they all. You see them all. So we are here to celebrate Karuna's 30th anniversary, which is really quite a milestone for a small organization. Many of you may have known about Karuna for years, been involved in it, known a board member or staff. But you know, some may have not. Maybe some of you were dragged here. I don't know. So I'm just going to give you just a little bit of background. I will say there are probably not many people in this area, or certainly in the peacebuilding field, who haven't heard about Paula Green. Paula founded the organization in 1994. She was a pioneer in the peacebuilding field, most commonly, and I think aptly, referred to as a force of nature. She was just a complete dynamo. She accomplished many things. She got many awards, including recognition from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and had the vision 30 years ago of basically sort of extending the work she was doing as a peace builder and peace activist in starting the organization. And I think it is timely to reflect on that vision today, particularly when there is so much going on, so many challenges in the world, and what Karuna has been doing and what it means. The word means compassion in Sanskrit. To think about what it has been doing and what it continues to do. It is nothing short of amazing, in my humble opinion, particularly recognizing that this organization is very small. We're 5 staff. It's remained small, and has maintained its consistent focus on building bridges and conflict-riven societies, working both on kind of 2 sides of the spectrum, both to prevent violence and finding ways to foster reconciliation and healing after the most brutal wars and genocides. And it began with Karuna's work in Bosnia, and then Rwanda, you're going to be hearing about today, Myanmar, Sudan, and 25 other countries over its 30 years. And now I am extremely pleased and thrilled that we are working here in Western Massachusetts, working with schools, bringing our experience to bear on the growing polarization issues and helping schools to prevent violence and also to support restorative practices. The core of all the work, and what Paula was so gifted at, is really building trust among people coming from very different backgrounds, often violently opposed, different political, religious affiliations. And it is trust that is so clearly, sorely needed in many, many parts of the world. And it's just by coincidence, I was in Washington, D.C. at the annual conference of the Alliance for Peacebuilding, which Karuna is a member of. And there was a report, Rachel, board member, was also there, that an organization has been put out, which is a trust barometer. They've been doing this, Metropolitan knows about it, for some time. Sort of measuring trust in all sorts of different domains and dimensions and areas. And not surprisingly, decline. Declining trust in the government, declining trust in the media, no surprise there. Declining trust in science. And at a personal level, apparently 60% of people report avoiding others based on politics. So while it may not be a surprise, it is pretty sobering, I have to say, to see the hard data, the degree to which trust is critical, so critical that everything we're doing is steadily eroding across the globe, and this is a global barometer. Which makes it, I think, more important that all of us double down in every way we can personally to reach out and connect with people, including those who may not think like us or vote like us. So for Karuna, building trust and bridging divides has been at the heart of the work since it began. And while the conflict landscape has changed significantly, and it is, I would say, far more complicated in certain ways because there's now climate change, increasing authoritarianism, growing levels of polarization, we continue to do much of the same thing since Karuna has been doing at the beginning, which is creating space for people to come together, building trust where there's been distrust and fear, fostering dialogue and empathy while adapting and responding to the changing dynamics. So you're going to hear more about exactly what we're doing from staff in a little bit. But in brief, it can look very different depending on the circumstances, whether we're building community mediation mechanisms with farmers and herders in Nigeria, or we're empowering women in Madagascar to stand up for the rights to oil companies, or helping the West African regional organization improve its early warning and conflict mitigation systems, or working with students here in Massachusetts. I think it certainly is easy to be cynical or depressed, or perhaps feeling helpless with so many issues and challenges facing the world. But I believe that there is much to give us hope in the work I think that Karuna's been doing, and you're going to hear a very powerful story shortly from our guest speaker, Rosette Sebasoni, who's here from Rwanda, who'll kind of show us what is possible. What has always struck me about Karuna since I moved here from Washington, D.C., where I used to work for the government and managing aid programs, was its humility and its integrity. It has remained a very small organization, as I said, in contrast to many other large international NGOs doing similar kinds of work with much larger budgets and a very different model. You know, what has been core to Karuna's model since the inception was working very closely with small local organization, partner organization, whether in Pakistan or Sudan. These are often very small community organizations. And while Karuna has certainly evolved, as I've said, in response to the changing landscape, we've developed a lot of expertise in countering violent extremism, for instance, incorporating the impact of climate change. It has increasingly deepened its support for these partner organizations. And as we look ahead and how we're evolving, figuring out, which we've always done, of where we can make the biggest difference, we believe that focusing on building the capacity and expertise of our local partner organizations is critical and where we can make the most contribution. So to that end, we're very excited to launch a Peacebuilding Partners Network to sort of help build connections and support between these small organizations. We're doing that in partnership with our partner in Nigeria, the Neem Foundation. So to close, I just want to thank you all for your interest and support for Karuna and coming here on this very gorgeous day. We couldn't be doing it without all of your support. And I'd like to repeat, just to end, the simple observation I heard this week, again at this conference I was at, by the very impressive former president of Ireland, Mary McAleese. She was an amazing woman and peace builder who lived through the Troubles, and reflecting on her experience dealing and living through the violent divides in Ireland, she said, "Peace is the future of the human race if there's a future. Peace is the culmination of human dignity and core to all our goals of human prosperity and development. Without it, nothing else is possible." Thank you all. We're now going to have a brief video, which is kind of a highlight of some of Karuna's work through the years. And then we are going to hear from our wonderful guest speaker, Rosette. Okay?
Since 1994, Karuna Center for Peacebuilding has worked in partnership with communities that have experienced violent conflict to foster social healing and develop their capacity to contribute to lasting peace. We have strengthened local organizations and networks for violence prevention in more than 30 countries, from Sudan to the United States, from Israel and Palestine to Myanmar. From the beginning, our approach has integrated dialogue processes into larger strategies to rebuild trust across divides and address underlying causes of conflict. People who once saw each other as enemies become able to cooperate toward a shared goal of a secure future, free of the threat of violence, in which human dignity and rights are respected. Because the wounds of war persist for generations, our work has the same long-term outlook. When Karuna Center brought together educators across ethnic divides in the aftermath of the Bosnian War, one of the legacies of that project was a new peacebuilding organization founded by a participant that has continued to work as our partner in the subsequent decades. When we convened Sri Lankan religious leaders across the deep scars left by the Civil War, they were then able to reach out to more than 5,000 community members in projects that crossed ethnic and religious divides and formed local peace councils that remain active today. In Rwanda, after decades of work to promote reconciliation and rebuilding in the aftermath of the genocide against the Tutsi, we convened our partners in a project that empowered 1,400 young adults who had grown up in the genocide's shadow to lead more than 400 projects to heal and uplift their communities.
Well, I remember one of the first sentences that you said was, either you deal with this and what happened to you, or you will have your children and grandchildren. You will put them in position to deal with these things. And I just felt it's not fair that we would transfer our traumas and our hate and our anger towards on the next generation to come, but it was really up to us to start healing right away.
Through our initiatives over the past 30 years, we have fostered social healing far beyond the personal level into community and societal transformation, creating platforms for people who are impacted by conflict, especially women, youth, and marginalized identity groups, to advocate for just and nonviolent solutions to the problems they face. Now, 3 decades after Karuna Center began, we are proactively working in areas where violence could be likely to escalate. In areas impacted by climate change, insecurity, and dangerous political polarization, we are using our experience to promote cooperation over resource conflicts, lift up the voices of the people affected, and defend the humanity of those who are scapegoated and targeted for violence. By working in close partnership with local organizations, we take the work deeper and farther than many larger international organizations. Over the past 5 years, we have collaborated with Nigerian organizations to create the Protecting Our Communities initiative, which has developed community peacebuilding systems in 18 communities impacted by insecurity and conflicts among farmers and herders. Collaboration with our partners in Nigeria has involved empowering people to lead their own dialogues and early warning, early response networks, incorporating peer-to-peer mental health supports to help heal the trauma of violent conflict, and developing channels of communication for communities to share their insights with traditional leaders, religious leaders, security forces, and government from the local to national level.
yi sulhu da sasanci da fahimci juna ba za ka tattata haka nan ana wayan da mutane da kansu ba kaman da ya karyan wannan kungiya a cikin garin mayanci.
Amba wasu maluma kwa vile kwa video na kwa kitu kile na semba kwa Mungu kasi vile kwa japo mbao ile vile mbao yule kwa japo matsembe na vile wasu japo iponi.
Through this collaboration in Nigeria, community members have identified and resolved more than 1,000 incidents that could have sparked broader violence. Farmers and herders have come together to advocate jointly at state level and national forums organized by the project, and women in grassroots communities have gained new platforms for their leadership. We are now supporting our community-based partners to be anchors that sustain this work, and we are expanding it into neighboring Nigerian communities, as well as implementing a similar pilot model in climate-impacted areas of Benin. Looking forward, we are increasing our focus on developing local capacity for peace, supporting local peacebuilding organizations and establishing a network to connect them, and strengthening conflict prevention systems that can be used for decades to come. This includes expanding our work within the United States, where we see some of the same warning signs as we have around the world: extreme levels of political polarization and dangerous speech about outgroups such as immigrants. Over the past year, we have begun a pilot approach working with schools in Western Massachusetts to better identify and address warning signs of student engagement in extremism or violence, and to build more resilient, inclusive school communities. Building peace is similar to planting a tree. The best time to do it is 30 years ago, and the next best time to do it is today. Our goal is not only to stop violence now, but to support the people and build the networks that will promote durable peace for generations to come.
If I could invite Olivia Dreier to come.
Thank you for putting that together, Laura. Quite amazing to see, and so moving to hear Vahiden and Paula speaking together. My goodness. So, all right. So I'm Olivia Dreier, for those who don't know me, and I began, is this okay now? Yeah. I began working with Paula in about 2001. And at some point succeeded her as the director before passing the torch to Paula about 4 years ago. And I would say in my 20 plus years of being involved in peace-building programs in war-torn regions around the world, for me personally, the most moving project was our recent one in Rwanda, which we developed with local partners just as ex-perpetrators were completing their prison sentences and going back to the communities where they had land, where they were living next door to families where they had killed family members. And it is a huge honor and pleasure for me to introduce Rosette Sebasoni, who is here all the way from Kigali, Rwanda, who managed that program for us. The program had a lot of successes, but I would attribute much of the success to Rosette. And as you will hear from her, she is a genocide survivor herself. She was 15 at the time of the genocide. She went on with determination to get a university degree. She helped found the major memorial site and museum in the capital of Kigali. She worked with the government in reconciliation, many different projects. And we were exceedingly lucky to have her for this Karuna project, which you're about to hear about. And for me, I think most impressive was Rosette's capacity and skill to show equal compassion both for survivors and the ex-perpetrators. And that capacity, I think, is what really brought this kind of tremendously healing power into the project. So please, Rosette.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad that I'm here today and on time because it was going to be a disaster. When I came, my luggages were left in Doha, and it was not easy. I've been following up and didn't come through until I had to use the connection of Rwandan diaspora to find me something to wear, something to It was not that easy. So I'm glad that I'm here today, and thank you, Karuna Center for Peacebuilding, for the invitation. And thank you, Olivia, for introducing me. As she mentioned, I'm Rosette Sebasoni. I'm the former country program manager of Karuna Center for Peacebuilding in Rwanda for the project called Healing Our Communities, promoting social cohesion in Rwanda. So for those who do not know much about Rwanda, so Rwanda is a small landlocked nation situated in center of Africa, and it is a very beautiful country with rolling hills. So it is one of the countries in the world where you can visit the mountain gorillas. So you are most welcome to visit and you have that experience. It was not like that though, some years back. So Rwanda went through and experienced one of the most traumatic events of the 20th century, the genocide against the Tutsi. In which more than 1 million Tutsi and moderate Hutu were killed in only 100 days, killed 1 million people. I was in Rwanda, I was 15, I witnessed everything. I lost my parents, my both parents, my 4 siblings, my 4 little sisters, more than 8 people from my family, the ones at least I can remember, that I knew the names at that age. My older brother and I, we survived and were hiding, fleeing from bands of killers for 3 months. A bit of background about Rwandan history. For centuries, Rwanda was the home of 3 socio-economic groups that used to live in harmony side by side. The Hutu, Tutsi, and the Twa shared the same language and same religion, but methods of divide and rule used by the colonial administrations, first Germany, the Belgians after the First World War, planted the seeds of division and hatred between Hutu and Tutsi. The Hutu were farmers, while Tutsi were cattle headers, and as a result, social and economic distinction led to the creation of different classes within pre-colonial society. The socio-economic distinction between Hutu and Tutsi was designated ethnicity by the colonial powers. Rwandan's Belgian rulers decided that anyone with 10 or more cows were called a Tutsi, and less than 10 cows was called a Hutu. So this would then apply permanently to their descendants, regardless of individual changes in socio-economic status. A racial identity card was imposed on Rwandans for ease of identification by the colonialists. The colonial administration used the Tutsi for indirect rule, but the request for independence by the King of Rwanda was not appreciated. And the colonial authorities then empowered extremist Hutu to act against the Tutsi. From 1959 to 1994, hundreds of Tutsi were killed, jailed, or forced to exile. The genocide reached full scale in 1994. Government-trained militia established roadblocks at each intersection in Rwandan cities, towns, and villages, offering no chance of escape. Some of these militia units had been trained to be able to kill 1,000 people within only 20 minutes. Hutu civilians were pressured to join in. Women were beaten, they were raped, humiliated, abused, and ultimately murdered, often the sight of their own families. Children watched as their parents were tortured and killed in front of them before their small bodies were sliced, smashed, and abused. The elderly were mercilessly murdered. Neighbors turned on their neighbors, friends of their friends. Rwanda turned into a nation of brutal killers of innocent people. I witnessed that personally at the age of 15. The international community failed to prevent the genocide, yet they were aware, nor to intervene to stop the genocide. The genocide was finally stopped by Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF, a group of mostly Tutsi refugees in Uganda and other neighboring countries of Rwanda, who had taken up arms to liberate Rwanda. After the victory, they formed a mixed government and worked with all Rwandans to rebuild a shattered country. After genocide math, it was clear that Rwanda had to deal with the legacy of genocide. So dealing with post-genocide situation was not an easy task to Rwandan society at all. A society where suddenly a mixture of wounded and traumatized survivors and perpetrators. It was polarized society full of mistrust. The new government prioritized the reconciliation process and the security of everyone in Rwanda. Rwanda values and traditions were used in the effort to try to bring justice and development in the country. For example, there was Gacaca court. Gacaca means grass. So what happened, it's not something that was new, because the community members, they used to sit together when there's a conflict, and the elders and the integral people could sit and try to resolve those issues with the community members and by speaking the truth of what happened. So this was used by the government to be able to bring together the survivors and the perpetrators. So it was a Rwandan traditional way of resolving the community conflicts, as I've just mentioned, where it sought to respond to the most challenging question of justice for survivors. Punishment was not really the only aim for Gacaca courts, but seeking truth, encouraging forgiveness, and restoring trust within Rwandan society, where a major part of the Gacaca objectives was to bring together all those part of the country. 2 million cases were handled in only 10 years, whereby using the conventional justice system, it would have taken a minimum of 300 years to complete the last case. In Rwanda, the reconciliation process was not a standalone program. It was embedded in many other programs responding to needs for economic development, health, and education sector. Rwanda's homegrown solutions have been successful in garnering non-discriminatory public policies that truly aim at promoting social cohesion and reconciliation among neighbors. How is Rwanda today? In Rwandan society today, survivors and perpetrators, they live side by side. There is no separation of Hutu land or Tutsi land, and identity cards bearing details of ethnicity were abolished. The Constitution of Rwanda, the Constitution of Rwanda is very clear about this and very tough. Today's Rwanda is committed to equal opportunity for all, yes. In parliament, in Rwanda we have 64%. They are MPs. The MPs, they are women. So I think this is one of the highest percentage in the whole world. 64% of the parliamentarians, they are women. So the road to true reconciliation is long. Most ex-perpetrators have completed their sentences and returning to their communities, which means they are living side by side with survivors and family members of those they killed. So Karuna Center contributed a lot with the project. I'm going to talk of the project of reconciliation. I'm going to talk about the recent project of Karuna Center for Peacebuilding in Rwanda, the one I led, which was a USAID funded project, 4-year project, and it was the Healing Our Communities project that was designed in partnership with 3 Rwandan organizations to support the reintegration of ex-perpetrators back into their communities and to support the challenges of reconciliation. The program had 3 intertwined components. So one was the trauma healing for survivors and ex-perpetrators in joint workshops and the training of the members of both groups to become volunteers, healing companions for their communities. So the perpetrators and the survivors were having at the same time, the same hall, the training, the trauma training, and also the TOT, the trainer of trainers. And we're having the ex-perpetrators as going through the TOT and also the survivors, so they became trainers or training of trainers. The second arm was the training of local facilitators for dialogue clubs in every community to address ongoing tensions and more ex-perpetrators return to their communities. So the same for the facilitators, dialogue facilitators. We always had the survivor and the perpetrator. So the third one was the creation of youth peace clubs with members from all backgrounds. They helped the genocide widows and other vulnerable community members, organized those youth, organized the intergenerational dialogues, and made videos of rescue and reconciliation stories to promote positive messages. As youth, as the modern world, those videos were published on social media, and we have what we call the IVR, whether someone who does not have even a smartphone could hear a reconciliation story from his phone, and he was guided how he was going to get that message. And others were on YouTube and everywhere on social media to help to promote the positive messages of peace. So the program has had powerful results, and over the last year I have been gathering testimonies personally of reconciliation stories from 30 participants for a book that Olivia Dreier, we are together today, and I are putting together as part of the 30th commemoration of the genocide in Rwanda. So before I say more about the impact of the program, I would like to show you a brief video from the interviews, and this will give you the best feel for the challenges we faced and the fact that it is possible to forgive, to reconcile, to rediscover our common humanity even after the war's atrocities in unmanageable. We can watch the video.
Mbere ya jenoside rero twari abantu dusangira n'abahutu, twe twitwa abatutsi, tugasangira, tugashyingirana, tugafashanya mu buzima bwose. Ngiye kumva numva ngo umututsi wese ahari agomba gupfa. Ntabwo nari nzi ko hari umuntu ushobora kwica mugenzi we.
Aho bya jenoside kuko habayeho sinabona ko nivuga ko ni ibintu biteye isoni biruhije. Twari turanye n'abaturanyi, ariko haza leta mbi itwigisha kwica abatutsi. Mfunguwe ko twagiye no mu ngando baratwigisha, ariko kugira ngo ngire umuhirane mfite ipfunwe, ese nzabaho nte, ese nzabana n'abana bate ibintu nakora icyaha.
Mu mutima nyine ubwoba ugakomeza, aho uhuye nawe ukumva ni kwa kundi kandi nawe noneho aho unyuze ni babandi. Tubaho muri ubwo buzima, abantu bishe uwo ari wese, atari n'uwaje kwica iwacu, umuntu wiswe interamwe wese, umuntu wafunzwe wafunguwe, numvaga ko nta mvugana nawe sinkubeshye.
Ndaryama ngasinzira ko muri igitima cyawe yiya ngo di namubona turutse nkari gashaka hano nanyura.
Icyo gihe nararebye insanga nyuma nari mpetse Munyaneza ku mugongo wanjye, aho ndi hose mba muhetse ntigera mwururutsa, ariko maze kumubabarira, maze kumuha imbabazi, naramwururukije mushyira hasi. Umutwaro wowe wamvunaga ntabwo wongeye kumvuna.
No kubana na mugenzi wa mahoro, ubumwe n'ubwiyunge. Ubwo twarabanye, noneho bakajya bamuzana akicara nkaha nawe ukicara nka mbega, bakaducangacanga. Ntumva namureba nkumvise tu kwibanzanye iruhande we n'igiki ku mutima, ese ni ibiki banzanyemo. Ibiganiro bwa mbere ratangira mvaye ntacyo niyumvishijemo, hari akantu karimo kagenda kaza. Numva hari impinduka irimo igenda ihinduka mu mubiri. Ni wa mugani biriya bintu bizageraho bigeze umuntu. Bwa kane noneho tugatangira tugakusumwamo, ese ngwino tugende uwakoze jenoside.
Baratwigishije, numva ko nyine nabanaga n'ihungabana, kandi batwigisha n'uburyo bwo kurikira, batubwira ko uburyo rukumbi bwo gukira ihungabana ry'ibyo wakoze
ari ukwatura ukavuga ukirekura ukabivuga ukabisobanura kandi ugatinyuka ugasaba imbabazi umuntu wari wese wumva wakoreye icyaha.
Muri abo ngabo banyiciye abana harimo wabigizemo uruhare yitwa Twagiramungu Boniface. Naramubabariye nawe kandi imbabazi yarazisabye kandi numva ari nta kibazo nkimufiteho, nawe ndabizi ko ari nta kibazo, nta pfunwa gifite kuri njyewe.
Kuba natekereza niwaba yarahishe ikintu yaba yarakoze yakivuga ku mutima akaba heza, niwe yagikoreye akamenya ibyo ari byo nawe ku mutima hagake, kuko nta kintu uvuze ku mutima uhora haremereye cyane, utinya witinya na wa wundi wowe wagikoreye nawe akagutinya, mwese ugasanga mwese muri gutinya.
Maze kugitekerezaho cyane imbona ko ntasigaye ku bwabo, ko nasigaye ku bw'Imana. Ndangije mfata umwanzuro wo kubabarira uzansaba imbabazi wese. Hari umugabo wari waransabye imbabazi witwa Munyaneza, nari narazimwimye, njyewe njya kumwishakira ndamubwira nti narakubabariye ntuzongere kumpunga.
Ngiye nk'urubyiruko nk'umuntu mutoya ntabwo nari nzi ko hari uruhare nagira, kuba ntari icyo nagira mu nzira yo kubaka amahoro namarira igihugu. Dufata abana babana twese, hari abaturutse baturutse hanze, hari abakoze ibyaha bya Genocide, hari aba babikorewe, twese dukora itsinda hamwe kandi tugakora ibikorwa bigamije kubaka amahoro, nta urebye ngo ese ndiki.
Thank you very much. So we don't have time to go into details of the what allowed us for such transformation. They have just mentioned, but with the right combination of programming, it can happen. So people want to create a better future for their children. None wants to go back to the horror of genocide. So 5 years after the close of the Karuna program in Rwanda, the impact continues. The volunteer healing companions continue to support those with ongoing trauma up to now in Rwanda, whether they are survivors or perpetrators. The Dialogue Club facilitators are called upon by local government officials to resolve some disputes, and the youth have initiated many new projects. I'm still in touch with those 3 components of the project, and I can be very happy of the sustainability of the project up to now. So my involvement in this project has been a critical part of my own healing journey personally. When the killers came to attack us, that's my story, my own story. My mom called us aside, gave me the money she had on her, and said to me and my elder brother, "You will survive. Be the man." In our tradition, it means be strong, be courageous, be resilient, and be good in everything. That's the last time we had a beautiful voice, because after that, immediately, my parents were rushed and were killed by machetes and the clubs, and whereby my 4 siblings, my 4 little sisters, were thrown in the septic tank alive. They've been crying, calling us for help, which did not able to offer. So they were there until their last breath. So we were there, also waiting for our turn. Then the killers said that they were tired, that they will come back tomorrow, like the next day, which, of course, the same night we escaped, and the killers could not find us in that community where we were, and we started hiding during the day in the bushes, walking at the night, not even knowing where to go, of course, and this lasts for 100 days in that life. So as a Tutsi, we knew that we didn't have where to go. Since the whole country, the Tutsi were being exterminated, and it was the whole country. So those who killed my direct family were our neighbors, were our good friends. And the one who came in front of the attack, the group, was my mom's former student. My mom was a teacher. So we were betrayed by our good friends, and we know them because genocide happened during the day and night, and Rwandans were killing Rwandans. In Rwanda, even before even today, we speak the same language in the whole country. So they were speaking the same language that we understand. They were neighbors. They were the people that we know. They were their friends, and they knew very well. While we were at home, they were looting all our properties while we were there. They didn't even leave us something to eat. So they knew what they were doing because of that hatred that were put in the hearts of people for many years. So, of course, my eyes have seen unimaginably horrific atrocities, as I have just mentioned. Finally, the RPF stopped the genocide, and we were saved and survived. But where to start the life? That was the major issue. Orphans, having nowhere to live, having no means. Personally, I decided whatever it takes, I'll have to be strong. Because of the legacy of my parents, I said I have to be strong. My story of resilience is the legacy of resilience first came from my parents. The way they struggled, the time of divisions in Rwanda, with discrimination, but they were able to study and they finished their degrees, and they were able to have something to do and to be helping financially their family members. The way they were strong, courageous, wise, and good-hearted people. That was motivating me to go on. I decided to move on in life, not look back. So I said to myself that I have to be strong and go back to school and succeed. And indeed I succeeded. I went up to having my master's degree. So I also decided to forgive everyone who wronged me. I was very young. I could not think about children at that time, age of 15. But I said to myself that I don't want to be like killers because they have hurted us. I didn't want to imitate what they did or what they have done to us. I say that I have to follow my heart that was telling me this was bad, don't be like killers. Take a different way. This is how I followed my heart, and I was able to forgive everyone who wronged me, because most of them, they didn't ask for forgiveness, and we knew them, but I decided that way. And I'm a Christian, I'm a believer. It also helped me to have that motivation. So the forgiveness is deeply personal. I know my fellow genocide survivors who are really still very far, but I understand them. They have seen a lot, and it's not something that it's instant, it's something that's automatic. It's really a process. So I decided to take that journey, also to honor the many family members that I lost. Now I'm a mother of two, a boy and a girl, with a happy marriage. My brother is married too, with 5 children. So our family is increasing. So I understand that we need to forgive and move on for the future of our children so that they can live a peaceful life without hatred and division as we lived as parents and our grandparents. So when I finished my studies, I wanted to contribute and worked with peacebuilding and reconciliation. As Olivia mentioned, I worked with the Kigali Genocide Memorial, and I was among the first people who really put up those together to have the memorial up and running. I was the coordinator of the Kigali Genocide Memorial at that time in 2004. So I worked with the Peace Corps for Justice and Peace. I worked with the project called Rescuers Project, whereby we were collecting the testimonies of those who saved the lives of the Tutsi. As I mentioned from the beginning, the genocide perpetrated against Tutsi did not kill only Tutsis, but the moderate Hutus. The ones who were opposing the idea of killing the Tutsi were also killed. There are some Hutus who were very courageous to save the Tutsi's life. Some were killed, others survived. So in that project, we were collecting those informations of these heroes. They were the heroes of the country, and they were given medals by the President of the Republic and other high authorities. So I also worked with the Karuna Center for Peacebuilding for the projects that I have just presented to you briefly. So on this project was very beneficial to me as a person, as a survivor who had started the journey of forgiveness. So while interacting with the survivors and perpetrators, and I understood very well how both got traumatized, the survivors and the perpetrators. And I also understood the level of mistrust that were kept in their hearts of many, and how the honest dialogue and asking for forgiveness from the bottom of their hearts opened the door to the personal healing of inner wounds, even physical illnesses. This I heard them from different testimonies that were the project participants were telling us during the different sessions. So while working on this project, also I was moved by the courage of the survivors and perpetrators of living side by side, and how the power of forgiveness brought them together again in extraordinary way, despite the deep pain and bitterness that they are still carrying from the genocide atrocities. You have seen the Maria and Boniface. I think there are photos there, right there. I was moved by their, it is really very genuine. When you talk about forgiveness, sometimes it is beyond us, because of what happened in Rwanda. But some examples show us that how impossible was made possible by that forgiveness and the reconciliation. The Boniface, this is how we visited the community. It is in the western province of Rwanda, and we found out that two of them, they delayed for this session, and we asked them, they told us while we were just discussing, the Maria's daughter was sick and she was in the hospital, and the kids of Boniface were the ones who went to take care of Maria's child, while the Boniface is the ex-perpetrator and Maria is the genocide survivor. But because of the power of the forgiveness, they became a family. There's empathy among themselves. And I was moved personally by their examples, and they live well, and yet Boniface participated in the killing of 4 children of Maria Wambaje. So it was something that really I was moved by their lives now and how they are together up to now. I was also encouraged by the youth who were born after the genocide and the way they are committed to peace building and learning from their unfortunate past to build the better world. I hope I've given you the sense of hope. If reconciliation can happen in Rwanda with all these few examples that I have just given after the worst genocide that happened in that country, if it can happen anywhere else. Through the type of programming that Karuna Center implements worldwide, we can help societies heal from the horrors of war and genocide, and you can stop the kind of division, hatred, and polarization spread by so many political leaders and now by social media. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosette. That was an incredibly powerful, moving story that you shared with us, and it is, I think, impossible for most of us to imagine the journey that you have gone through. That level of forgiveness. It defies my imagination. And I do think that there's nothing that could embody the spirit of Karuna, compassion, more than you and what you have been through. You know, as a teenager to be able to come to what you came to, working equally with survivors, perpetrators, ex-perpetrators, and having the capacity to recognize the humanity in each and every person. It's almost unimaginable. And it is therefore our very deepest honor. I am here with Dave Bacher, a board member and Paula Green's son, to present you with the Paula Green Award. We give it every couple of years, not every year, and we could really think of no one more fitting who embodies this spirit of Paula and of Karuna, of compassion in action, and we are thrilled to present this award to you in recognition of all that you have done in your life.
So I'll just say it very briefly. Karuna was the culmination of my mom's life's work, and now it's her legacy. And with this award, we just want to formally acknowledge the work that you've done to continue the mission. Thank you.
Now we are going to have a brief little bit of description from our current program people. Jennifer and Troy, if you want to maybe briefly give a little bit more of a sense of what we're doing right now. And then we will come to the close. Okay?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's I'm sure we're all in a little bit of a similar place where this was a very impactful story. I know that my heart feels very full for what you've gone through and for what your country has gone through, and I think really attests to the power of the human spirit. So thank you so much for that. I want to just talk a little bit about some of our programs today. I think we all know that we are beginning to experience some of the things that other countries in conflict have experienced as well. We have a pretty high level of polarization in this country. We have democratic backsliding. We have rising extremism and extremist groups. So we decided a few years ago to try to take what we had learned internationally and see if we could try to bring some of it to benefit here in the US, and in particular in the Pioneer Valley. So we have just finished a 1.5-year project called Brave Schools. It's our first big domestic project. It was funded by the Department of Homeland Security. And the goal of this project really was to try to strengthen the capacity of local schools to prevent violence, including violence inspired by extremist ideologies. We worked with 8 schools locally, 8 middle schools and high schools in Franklin, Hampshire, and Hampden counties. And Laura, if you want to put up there we go. So we really tried to work along the full prevention spectrum on this project. All the way over on the left, in terms of sort of primary prevention, we really wanted to look at how we could support schools in strengthening the sense of community and belonging at their schools. We know that youth who feel like they belong, who feel like they're connected to a community, are going to be unlikely to start down a path that might culminate with engagement in violence. And so we did that by supporting efforts that schools were already starting to integrate restorative practices into their schools to help build community and to really begin to shift towards more effective ways of handling disciplinary issues using restorative justice and restorative practices. One of the ways that we did support them was by offering a training for their students. It was a day-long training teaching their students how to facilitate community building circles so that students could be leaders to help strengthen their school communities. In the middle part of this spectrum here, we also we trained small groups of staff at each school, we call them care teams, in how to identify and then work productively with students with concerning behaviors, especially those who they thought could be potentially at risk for getting pulled into violent extremism, down the line. Our trainers, we had 2 trainers, Robert Orell from Sweden and Tony McAleer from Canada. They had both gotten pulled into neo-Nazi groups when they were teenagers, They had found their way out as young adults and have really devoted their adult lives to trying to get other people out. And they really taught the care teams at each of our schools some skills for motivational interviewing, for how to work effectively with these youth. It was a very powerful training that I think gave people a really new perspective on how to approach working with youth who have these sorts of concerning behaviors. And then finally, working more on the right side of the spectrum here, we really wanted to assess each school's prevention capacity. We interviewed them, kind of an in-depth questionnaire, and then produced a report for each school with recommendations for how they might increase their violent prevention capacity, including developing much more robust threat assessment and threat management practices. And then each school developed their own implementation plans, taking everything that we had done in the first sort of few months and had all last year then to kind of come up with their own plans and implement something in their schools. And just to give you one example, in one of the districts that we worked with, they got students involved in creating a violence prevention campaign. It was called Caught in Act. Students Challenge is what they called it. Basically, they challenged their fellow students to show acceptance, compassion, and trust, to try to build a sense of belonging in their school community, because that's what they thought it was most missing. Administrators in this district also got trained in threat assessment and threat management and are now ready to begin implementing more robust threat assessment and threat management practices in their schools. And they also found extra funding to bring our restorative justice trainer to 2 of their schools to begin training teachers and administrators. And I just talked with our lead kind of contact there a couple of weeks ago, who said, you know, they really saw changes in their school climate just from the work that they did over the course of last spring, where they were really intensively trying to improve the sense of community and belonging. As a result of this project, Karuna has gotten additional funding from a local funder, the Bud Ackerman Fund, in order to do more training in restorative practices with teachers, students, and administrators. And we've also applied for new funding from the Department of Homeland Security. We are crossing our fingers that we will be able to continue this work over the next couple of years. I'm going to go to the next slide. Our other big project that I want to tell you about is called Protecting Our Communities. We're just completing it this month. It's a 5-year, $5 million project funded by the Department of State's Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor. And we've worked in 18 communities in 3 states in Nigeria. These are regions really affected by farmer-herder conflict and a range of other types of conflict. And our focus in this project has really been on giving communities the tools and skills that they need to protect their communities. We've worked with 4 really wonderful partners in Nigeria, the Neem Foundation in Abuja, an organization called Voluntary Aid Initiative in Zamfara, Hope for the Village Child in Kaduna State, and Elohim Development Foundation in Benue. And at the center of this approach has been establishing early warning, early response committees in each community. It's a little bit like the threat assessment teams that we've been trying to establish in schools, with dialogue really at the heart of early response. You know, again, connecting it to our Brave Schools project, it's a little bit like the focus on restorative practices in schools. And so our communities there now have really well-established processes that actually work. They're super effective to address conflict proactively. And what we hear from our community members is that they're really motivated to sustain these practices over the long term because they've seen how effective they are for managing conflict in their communities. The project has held more than 1,000 dialogue meetings and early warning, early response meetings in these 18 communities. And as you saw earlier in the film that Laura played, these communities have resolved more than 1,000 incidents that could have sparked broader conflict. And one thing our participants told us, we were actually all just in Nigeria for a week and got to speak with all of our partners who we've been talking to on Zoom for years now. And one of the things they told us is that what they've really seen in their communities is that the number of incidents that they report to police or that they take to the courts has just dramatically dropped, because it is so much more effective to take a conflict to the community dialogue facilitator and for people to sit together and talk. And that kind of building of understanding of different perspectives and building of trust is what allows them to basically resolve conflicts, some of which have been going on for decades. We also learned, if you want to go on to the next slide, one of the things that we also learned as part of this project, the emphasis tends to be with early warning, early response. It often tends to be on the early warning side of things, getting people to report. But we really emphasized really developing a robust early response. And we learned how important it is for that to be multifaceted. So early response includes very much dialogue, that is key, but it also includes psychosocial support to address trauma, advocacy to strengthen stakeholder support and investment, and really robust messaging on radio and social media. Also critical to this project has been engaging women and youth. We know that peace-building efforts are much more effective if you can bring women and youth on board. And I just want to give you a passage. This is from an interview with one of our participants this summer, who said that, and I'm quoting here, "Before now, we never knew that women and youth can form part of a council for decision making. But we have learned to include both women and youth in everything we are doing, because they suffer the most, they see threats before others, and they make significant contributions for solutions." So in this final year of the project, we've really been focusing on sustainability. We've worked very hard to connect these grassroots structures at the community level that we've built and that have become so embedded in communities, to begin to connect them to structures at the local government level, and then at the state level, and then even at the national level. So we have in the local government areas where these communities are, we are now just getting early warning, early response communities set up at that level. We've been working with peace commissions at the state level to get these structures set up there, so that we have kind of vertical connectivity, really building a foundation for then scaling these processes to a much larger group of communities. And I'm very pleased to say that we submitted a proposal to do just that, to begin scaling this project based on the capacity that's been built over the last 5 years. Been provisionally accepted by the Department of State. We're crossing our fingers, but we're expecting for it to be approved in the next couple of weeks and to be starting on September 30th. So I'm going to turn it over now. Our other big project is in Benin to Troy Caruana, who's another program manager.
Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Troy Caruana, program manager at the Karuna Center. I've been here just over a year now. And have been largely overseeing our program in Benin. This project is particularly dear to me, as I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Benin for 3 years. So it's wonderful to be working back in the country. Just to give a quick overview of the program, it is going on its 1-year mark in October. It's a Department of State funded program, specifically the Conflict and Stabilization Bureau, CSO, and the program is largely focused on addressing farmer-herder conflicts in the north of Benin, with a specific look at how we can integrate climate data to help address some of these challenges. Climate change has been identified as a very large accelerating factor for a lot of the clashes we see between farming and herding communities, as herding communities have to travel further to tend to their herds, and the farming population, it puts these communities in direct conflict with one another, scarcity of resources, a whole confluence of issues. So how can we proactively use climate data to do that? We're using many parts of what we've learned through our time in Nigeria, through the Protecting Our Communities program, and leveraging elements of that, specifically the early warning committees that Jennifer had mentioned. There's an advocacy element, kind of reaching out to government officials and local and traditional leaders to kind of get across some of these perspectives, particularly of youth, women, and herding communities that often aren't able to meaningfully participate in these decision-making processes, development of policy, so on and so forth. And then the third element is dialogues, just trying to get these communities together to begin addressing some of the challenges that each faces and moving past them. I'll stop there with the details. I'll be around after the event, and I'd be more than happy to jump into the details. But just to give two, I think, wonderful success stories we've seen already. While I was in country this spring conducting an early warning, early response training with our local partner, the Coexist Association, one of our communities just a few months prior had experienced a really violent clash between the farming and herding community that had spiraled and ultimately displaced the entire herding hamlet nearby. Shortly after that, there was a decree from the herding community in that area to essentially cut off all communication, that things had gotten to a point where we're done talking. But special permission was made more or less for members of this herding community to come together and be a part of this training with farmers from the same area. So that in itself was already a step to having these communities broaching these issues, learning how to collectively resolve them before they spiral. And it's already prompted local communities, that local community, to start forming its own committee and proactively at least opening that communication channel so that things can move forward. I think the second example I'll give very briefly, even just having various climate data available, so things such as precipitation or level of volume of water in a lot of the rivers, because flooding is such an issue in this area. Being able to provide this regularly through WhatsApp channels and radio communiques has already helped various community members to modify their activities. If they can anticipate rain, the herders are able to make sure their cattle aren't in a flood zone, where if there is a flood, they're unable to look after their animals. They might wander into the farm or fields of a farmer, causing conflict. So it's been really interesting as we get the data in place and in finding ways to make sure it's useful, accessible, and actually helping proactively address these conflicts. So a year into the program, we have another half of year left as it is a pilot, but we're very excited to see where it goes. And it's been wonderful seeing the community take the lead and just having such great local partners over there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Troy and Jennifer. Those were great overviews. We thought it was just important to give you a sense of what we're doing right here and now. We are drawing to a close. The only thing I will add is that I've already mentioned in terms of looking forward, developing this peace-building partner network of organizations we've worked with throughout the decades. That is in a nascent phase where we are launching it. We do not have funding. This is not something like these other programs you just heard about. We have gotten government grants to support, so we're going to be looking for support to launch that. But we're very excited to be doing it in collaboration with our wonderful partner, the Neem Foundation in Nigeria. The other thing I wanted to say, just briefly, is that we're also relaunching an advisory committee for Karuna. There had been one, but it's been a bit dormant. So we are relaunching that, and we've got some wonderful people, including some sitting in this room. I'm looking at Linda Trop, professor at UMass, who has worked with Karuna in the past and has kindly agreed to join, as has Olivia Dreier, our past executive director, and there are a number of other people who aren't here right now, but that's just something, just to help us sort of widen our network, serve as ambassadors, so we're very happy about that. And with that, we're coming to a close. I'm going to hand it to Olivia, but we're also going to see one short video from by Chris Wood. She's a sort of longtime supporter of Karuna's, and she wanted to be here in person and deliver this message, but she couldn't, so she offered to do a short little video. She's going to do that, and then over to Olivia.
Welcome to the celebration of Karuna's first 30 years. My name is Chris Wood, and I am a longtime supporter of Karuna. And I'm inviting you for just a moment to explore a unique connection among love, trauma, and transformation, an unlikely trio. You see, Paula Green, founder of the Karuna Center for Peacebuilding, literally changed my life nearly 30 years ago when I heard her talk and share about her peacebuilding work in war-torn countries. I could feel deep in my heart what it took for Paula and her team to prepare. to dig deep within themselves, to witness horrific trauma, to find ways to bridge division and still bring people together in their common humanity. Paula's astounding work and love in action open portals to possibilities of peace that have inspired and informed my work for peace within myself, my communities, and our world. In my own life, I have learned the power of love and forgiveness instead of vengeance and conflict. I know firsthand that we can accomplish much, especially when we use our hearts. The darkness and trauma of our world is evident in every newscast, on social media, and in more ways than I can care to recount here. Blame and fear are being skillfully used to divide us, we the people. However, when you have a dark room and you open the door, the darkness does not spill out. The light goes in. The love can go in. I am that light. You are that light, and we can choose to take action. Caruna's work is evidence that healing and transformation are possible. I invite you to join your light with mine and commit to financially supporting Caruna's work as generously as you can for the next 3 years. As you know, Karuna relies on support from its donors, from you and from me, to continue doing its work. There is no amount too small or too large, especially when given from your heart. And we will be doing this together. I have committed to making a substantial and meaningful donation to Karuna for each of the next 3 years. And like drops of water in the ocean, if you join me, we can create a tidal wave of love and support for Karuna's work for peace and understanding in our community and in our world for the next 30 years and beyond. I hope you will join me. Thank you.
Yes, I think that's a great round of applause for Chris Wood, who can't be with us today, but is a longtime supporter of Karuna. Thank you. And really, it's been so inspiring hearing over 30 years how directly Karuna Center can influence people, really through what we've learned today of their people-focused and really trust-building approach, and also with that indirectly as well, kind of all the lives that have been impacted. I'm Olivia Zeydler. I have the honor of serving as co-chair on the board together with Alan Davis. And I also wanted to kind of take a moment to share, I think, what Karuna means to, because it's a very personal kind of relationship with Karuna. And I started to kind of really admire Karuna's work, learning about this approach, when previously I was working in traditional kind of development work. And I was always so moved by the creativity, the will, the determination of some of the local people that I would work with. And I would always ask myself why that wasn't kind of more a practice brought over by other kind of development organizations working in the region. And then I get to learn about Karuna, who's doing this so amazingly. And while we're all here today to really celebrate the 30 years of impact that Karuna has created through this approach, I think we're all really excited about what the next 30 years could also potentially bring. So thank you to the committee today who helped organize this event and where we got to really learn about all this incredible work. So I do want to take kind of a moment, a round of applause to the organizing committee. And yes, just with that, would encourage all of us to spread the word about Karuna and really kind of try to continue to support this work as much as we can. But with that, I thank you all for being here and wish you a wonderful evening. And please feel free to stand up and head to the room for refreshments. So thank you.